All right, so this is part two. We're looking now at Katzenode Dell, something old, something new, integrating presentation software into the writing course. And they open with this great quotation from Tufte. Power corrupts, PowerPoint corrupts. Absolutely. So I know all of us, I'm guessing, have sat through some really hideous PowerPoint presentations, and even as mind-numbing as it might have been just to listen, somehow the a really crappy PowerPoint can just make it all the much harder to sit there and listen to. But Casson Odell's point is going to be that don't blame the tool. I guess don't blame the tool, blame the fool. I guess you could say. Uh, you can use PowerPoint in a good way that's going to enhance your presentation. It's going to be great. Or you can just do what you've seen everybody else do, kind of fall into that rut, so to speak, and really just not only not enhance your presentation, but actually make it worse. I think is the real problem here that Tufte's trying to get at. But anyway, they open with this question of what is the role of an oral presentation in a writing course? There's definitely an argument to be made, I think, that it doesn't belong in there. Right? We do have public speaking classes in other departments. Don't you have enough to do teaching students how to write? Do you really have time to take on this extra responsibility? But they do point out it's fairly common nowadays to see this. And also, even the quote unquote writing centers, including the one here, the Right Place, has tutors that help with presentations. There's even a room here students can go into to practice their presentations. So, anyway, I wanted to pause here and get your thoughts on this. Do you have an oral presentation project in your class? Do you think it belongs there or not? Why or why not? So moving on, obviously Katz and Odell thinks it does belong there. And they say it helps if you think about a presentation not as an event, but as a text. And if you think about it as a text, and a lot of the same skills that you develop as a writer will fit comfortably with this PowerPoint they're putting together. And it also, they say, enhances students' understanding of those principles and shows how they can transfer them from one situation to another. So I like this idea, right? So you work with students to develop a good essay structure, and then you say, hey, look, we can transfer these same skills to making an oral presentation. And when students see how those skills transfer, maybe at that point they can really start thinking about other applications for these the same set of skills. So I like that idea quite a bit. They also point out that students don't know as much as they think about PowerPoint. You can poll your class and say, how many people in here know how to make a PowerPoint? All the hands go up. But they say actually their technological expertise may far outstrip their rhetorical judgment. So yes, they know how to make it. They know how to add transitions, sound effects, and clip art, and all of this stuff. But do they really know how to use it effectively? How to use it in a rhetorically savvy way? That's really the question. And they point out a lot of the times you'll get these cluttered, distracted slides, needless decorations. Probably the biggest problem of all, the lack of structure. So they see a lot of these presentations, they'll just jump up there and say, well, today I'm going to talk about blah, 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 without giving you a solid introduction like they probably would in their essay. So those are the problems. And there's Katz and Odell's solution is to reinforce and emphasize what they call the given new contract. And this is a pretty basic idea. Your viewers, your listeners, your students, audience members, obviously they're not blank slates. They've had all kinds of life experiences and training and knowledge. That's basically all the stuff that's called givens here. And they say the speaker's job is to figure out what are those givens. And that's important because the only way they can learn something new is if you can connect the new stuff to the stuff they already know, right? The givens. And this is really where the rhetoric, or what I would call the audience analysis, comes in. And that's part of the project. It's a big part of their projects is having students do this really extensive audience analysis. And they've got examples in the book there you can look at to get a feel for this, what this would be like. But that's probably the biggest component. And personally, I think that would be a good thing to do for essays as well. We tend to sort of skirt over the idea of audience in a 191 class and just say either, well, we're not going to worry about the audience, or just say something like just a general academic audience, something along those lines. When reality is, of course, we very seldom write something important anyway without a well-defined audience. And it's helpful to know as much about your audience as possible. They also talked about how they want to put a lot of thought into the verbal and visual cues, and I think the real key is this third point here. So selecting and matching the visual with the verbal content. So they got their scripts, they're reading or improvising, I guess, and the idea is that they will whatever visuals are there aren't there to distract or aren't there needlessly, but they actually go hand in hand together to reinforce the message. And they got some really clever ways they do that. And finally, all of this builds into a voice consideration, which again comes back to that audience analysis and sort of how are you coming across? Are you scaring them? Do you sound like a reasonable person? Or there's some kind of crank, right? So these are all great. And they've got some examples here of assessment questions, or what I would consider to be assessment questions. So you can look at the introductions and how well do the words or images establish common ground and provide a basis for the new information. And I think the sample PowerPoint they have in here is really, really good for this. Setting the right tone, the right theme from the get-go. Throughout the presentation, how do those visual and verbal elements work together to present new information, anticipating the questions that particular group will have, considering the givens. And I usually, when I'm talking about this with students, I say, imagine giving the same presentation but to a junior high audience, now a high school audience, now, college age, and really what you're talking about, there's different sets of givens, right? How is the material organized? Does it create and satisfy expectations? This is a big one, always something worth thinking about. And then how do the words and visuals create an appropriate voice? So I guess I'll stop here. I'm curious again, if you do have an oral presentation assignment in your class, do you think these sorts of questions would be useful to you, or how do you assess the PowerPoints? What's sort of your criteria for this? I'll leave it there, and if you have any other thoughts or suggestions or comments or whatever, just let me know. And see you next time.